Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Ivy, for everything that you're doing and have done to get us into this room today. I just want to say thank you on behalf of Darlene and I. Thank you so much for showing up. There's a wonderful quote that says, "Leaders show up," and you registered and you're here for this wonderful time today. I didn't do a lot of, we didn't do a lot of slides that talked about ground rules and things like that, but I think it's important, as we all know, to continue to, as we're having conversation dialogue, even when we're in our breakout rooms in just a little bit, to continue to have respected voice and respect one another in your conversations for sure. The other thing I just wanted to say before we get started too is done is better than perfect. And so I love that quote because sometimes when we are on Zooms, as I just double checked to make sure I was plugged in, things happen. And so as we're working through our time together today or answering questions, there may be something that happens. You may drop off. That's okay. Just sign back in. Ivy and I and Darlene and Carol, we're all wanting to make sure that we present and are with you in a really good way. But at the end of the day, some things happen, and so we've done our best to anticipate for that. So Ivy, is the screen up already?
It is not, but I can go ahead and pull it up unless,
Yeah.
Darlene, you'd like to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, so what we'll do is you can go ahead and get the slides up, and then I think Darlene's first to go on intros, and then I'll intro myself after Darlene.
Okay, now ready. Wait for the slide to come up. So, hi everyone. I'm excited to be here today with Jason and to do this, and excited to be here with you as well. I will tell you, Jason had his quote, and my quote that I used that was so necessary and needed in the work that we do, and even in the conversations. And it said, "Just breathe," right? Because so many times we don't breathe, and right now we are in times where it's sometimes hard to breathe. And so I just want everybody to know this is a chance for you to take a breath, to be reflective, and to kind of just take in what you can take in. So, who am I? I currently am the Culture and Engagement Officer at Metro, which is in the Washington, D.C. area. And we provide transportation, bus and rail transportation for the customers who live in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. But I also was the past chief diversity officer at United Way Worldwide, as well as March of Dimes, as well as Fannie Mae. So I've been in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space for a very long time, and excited to talk to you about where we are today, which is why my title is Culture and Engagement and not Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So that's who I am.
Awesome.
Jason.
Yeah. So Jason Daniels here. Have the opportunity to be with some of you if you were in almost probably this time last year. I think it was last July. I had the opportunity to present on belonging during that time. But for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to meet Jason Daniels, I'm president and CEO of JAYRAMON, which is the way I like to describe our company, it is leadership development on one side of our company, and the other part is focused in the area of strategy. A lot of org change, org strategy work that we do for organizations. Some of that also includes things like strategic planning as well. So we've been doing, my wife and I equally run the business together, and we've been doing this business full time since 2016. I've worked for United Way of Greater Toledo for 7 years. So I started in 2005. I started in fundraising, and then for the last 6 years moved into an executive role overseeing mostly community impact and then strategy for the last 2 years that I was there. And then I moved to the United Way of Greater Cleveland, where I was there for 4 years in executive VP role with responsibilities across the organization, mainly impact, IT, human resources, and marketing. And that's where I had that wonderful opportunity to meet Darlene when she came to United Way Worldwide. And I was on, at that time, I think it was called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. And just continue to do that work also as a practitioner as well. And truly excited to be with you all today for sure. So next slide, if you can, next two slides actually, Ivy, if you could
Yeah.
push those forward.
Now, so I'm just going to take, you want me to take this, Jason?
Yes.
So I'm going to just talk a little bit about where we are today, the realities of where we are today. And again, when I started off with saying just breathe, it's important for us to breathe and to ground ourselves in what is happening, in the landscape of what's happening. We know that there's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of decisions that have been made. There are decisions that are being made, being unmade, being made again. There's a lot of activity that are happening, especially in the immigrant community, a lot of angst. And while things are happening sometimes to folks outside of ourselves, it's still happening to us as we are seeing what is happening. And not only that do we have what's happening just in our society, we also have what's happening in nature. And that too adds a lot of stress and turmoil and angst in our bodies. And so, really, what we're going to talk today about is what are the policies? What's happening around the policies? What's happening around funding? What's happening around public discourse? And what's happening around organizational priorities, right? Because a lot of organizations are taking very strong stands. Some are standing in their spaces and they're digging in. Others have said, okay, not doing it, I'm out of it 100%. Others are feeling the angst of customers and consumers saying, not fair, I'm not going to play in your sandbox if you're not going to be a part of our sandbox, right? So there's lots of stuff. And then how do you know? How do you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it? And so, for any of you who know me on this call, and some of you may remember me from before, I always try to keep a very positive mind about most things because many things are really just out of our control. And so, this isn't really about doom and gloom. This is not about, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. This is not a time to panic, but it is time to kind of step back, reflect, get grounded, and breathe and figure out how do we move and how do we pivot in the spaces that we're in. And it's just like a pendulum. It's going to go from one end where it is now, and it's going to go probably to another end that's going to be just as bad as where it is now. And then some point in time, it's going to come back to the middle. But I think in all of this chaos that's happening and all of this unknown spaces that we are in, many unknown spaces for the first time for a lot of people. It's the first time for some of the things that they're seeing and experiencing. I do think it moves the needle and it moves the needle to a better place. And so I think if we keep that as the North Star, this is just an evolution in the spaces in which we have been thriving for a very long time. This is an evolution to get us to a new point and place, and then we'll go from there. So we have to keep an open mind to see where that takes us, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Next slide. So I would just really want to, I don't really like reading off of slides, but as you can see, there's the push and pull over DEI. There's the executive orders. And I know, a lot of people are struggling with what do these executive orders mean? Whether you're a corporation, I'm in a public organization and we do get public funding. We get federal funding. And so we were very swift in making some decisions around that. You have your university settings that are figuring out how do we do these programs? Who are our students? How are we attracting students? How are we staying on point for the political concerns that are happening worldwide, not just within the US, but worldwide? And how does this impact grants that we're given? So from the nonprofit state, what do we do about equity-based grants and programs? How do we engage our community and what is happening in our community that we are supporting? So it's not just about facing cuts or eliminating programs, but it's also about the people, right? Some of you have communities where you are seeing you're seeing people being deported on a daily basis. And what does that do to the work that you have to do? So we have all of these things that we have to take into consideration. And we have to be smart about how we do anything and everything of what we're doing in this space. So I'll turn it over to Jason.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Next slide, Ivy. So, one of the things I'm in Ohio, right? So I'm in Northwest Ohio, close to Toledo. And one of the things that is really interesting, and some of you, I didn't see anybody from Ohio at first when I was looking through the chat, but one of the things that went into place, one of the laws that went into place was Ohio Senate Bill 1. And as of June 27th, DEI offices on higher education campuses throughout the state, all training, scholarships related to DEI in any way, shape, or form, including faculty having the ability to strike, has all been banned. And just today, behind me, I'm actually on the campus of a university where I did a collaborative project that I'm facilitating today. But the reality is that the very group that I was working with, focused around sexual violence, some of their jobs were just eliminated 2 weeks ago because of this. So I know you all are feeling it in your cities and in your states. I think it's Wisconsin that's also going through things that are very similar. And we're starting to see this kind of spread throughout, right? And so, as Darlene mentioned, even on the rollback in colleges and universities, the dismantling of offices. I mean, there's just so many things that are happening, specifically for the folks at United Way, as we work with other United Ways as well. As we are talking to them, there's so many of you, so many United Way offices that are not all on the same page, to be very honest, right? Some of your boards have said, nope, this is the work and the mission that we're going to continue to drive. And some things have not been changed. And then other United Ways, the day the White House executive orders came out, there was a number of changes that took place pretty swiftly, as Darlene said. So I know that even on this call, you have your personal thoughts around what should happen, but even in your own workplaces, and in some instances, probably across various independent or individual United Ways, there's like, should we do this? Should we not? What does this mean around the funding that we're going to get? So just know that you're not alone in this. That's the whole purpose of this particular call, is that we all are very aware of some of the things that are happening. Darlene, I'll give you the next slide here.
Yeah. So, we're going to share some information with you. We actually have, and Ivy, you can move it, yep, to the next slide. We're going to show you, give you a report that actually was done by a company called Ceramount. And Ceramount actually is a consultant firm that focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, accessibility, and so all things DEIB. And from that report, we're going to talk about, what's happening in the space, what's happening to the transgender and non-binary community and what rights are being taken away, what's happening in terms of immigrants in this country and what rights are being taken away, and then women. And sometimes it's even hard to fathom that women's
Mhm.
rights are being taken away at this point in time. And so, women make up 51%, I think 50, if not 51 or 52, but 50, at least half of the people that make up this country. And to think that our rights are being taken away. And this is where intersectionality becomes really important. And I know we're not talking about that today, but to think about, you could be a woman and an immigrant and transgender and diverse and add all the ands to that, and the turmoil and the stress and the trauma that this actually brings if you can see yourselves even in one category or in all of the
Mhm.
categories, and that people are still functioning day to day. But think about the trauma and stress and the downstream of that trauma and stress in the workplace, at home, in your social settings, in your neighborhoods, just coming out of your house. What does that mean? And so this is a report for you to dive into and to get more information. So the more information you have, the more informed you are, the more you can breathe through some of the things that are happening, and the more intel you get helps you to make better decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say too, as a practitioner on the DEI space, one of the things that I noticed and appreciated in the report is I learned a lot. I mean, we see the news and there's so many different things that are happening, but I think because of the work of United Way, and because United Way in its very nature is a very inclusive, is an inclusive global organization, sometimes we focus so much on just our work and how our jobs are probably impacted. But I do think this report provides sort of looking through a different lens and provides in their feedback and in the research that's there, I think you will find it very beneficial to also just gain an understanding of what's happening, maybe even with some of your funded partners and sort of the things that they're having to also deal with as well. So I just think it's a really good report overall. Next slide. The complexity at the end of the day is, how does United Way, how do we continue to uphold inclusive values while adapting to these new legal funding and cultural pressures? And I do think that there's an opportunity for that. I already know that over the last 6 months in your organizations, you've had many conversations with your funded partners, your donors, your stakeholders about these complex conversations, especially from a fundraising perspective. And I think where we get back to is I've even talked to many of you and your organizations is that the value of inclusion is still there. So how do we follow through on the mandates? How do we conform to the laws that need to take place? But also, how do we continue to drive forward sort of the mission of United Way? And I think that's really where a lot of what we're going to hear from you today in the feedback and then the opportunities and then in our question and answer, I think will be helpful to one another in this opportunity. I'll hand it over. I know there's a waterfall activity that we're going to do. So I'll hand it over to Darlene. She told me about it, and I thought, yeah, this is cool. I haven't tried this before. So I think it'll be
All
a good thing
right.
for us to all do. First opportunity for you to
Okay.
participate.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to think about one word that describes how you feel as it relates to the new realities, right? So just one word. And if you want to make a little small statement, but not a dissertation, you can do that too. So type it in the chat, but don't hit send until we tell you to hit send. So we'll give you like, so thank you. Oops. Yeah. So that's our A student right there. That's our A student. So type it in the chat. And we know there's one level of frustration already. So when I count to three, after you type it, when I count to three, I want everybody to hit send on the chat and then open up your chat box and just watch it explode. So you got your word or you got your little statement. 1, 2, 3, send. Challenged, frustrated. It looks like it's slowed down. Hit send.
Disenfranchised,
Yeah,
overwhelmed, chaotic,
I'll have to open up the chat big time. Yeah,
exhausted. Ooh,
exhausted.
losing. Someone put losing.
Yeah,
Erased. Oh my gosh.
yeah. Uncertain, hopeful, puzzled. Yes, yes. Scared. Uh, very much so. Disheartened. Very much so. Sobered. That's what
For
that sober.
forced flexibility.
Yes. Yes, my word would be side eye. I'm like always walking around the organization now with the side eye saying, "You want me to do what?" When people ask me, like, well, tell us who you are. It's very hard for me not to say I'm the chief diversity officer. Very hard to not say that. And it's like, no, I'm culture and engagement. And I do it openly with a smile. Side eyed is right. See, I have a so all of this is we're all the reason for this is we're all in the same space, right? And once again, we are all very much feeling the same thing. And so we're not alone in this. We're challenged, we're scared, we're frustrated, we're disappointed, we're just it's just unbelievable what's happening. And again, like I said, for many of us, this is the first time we've seen this. For some of us, it's not the first time we've seen this kind of action happen before. But for many of us, it is the first time to see all of these changes that are happening in all of the different spaces, all at the same time. And so, if you want to know why you're just tired at the end of every day, that's the reason why. Because it's very much like how you get home and you turn the TV on and there's something in the background, but you could be doing other things. You could be cooking dinner, playing with the kids, working in the garden, whatever it is you could be doing, but there's noise in the background always, and it's always on. And that's what this is. It's noise that's always happening. So it's inside of us. It's getting into our psyches and how we do what we do. And it's exhausting. it is exhausting. And it's even, I know some of us have stopped watching TV. Some of us are, and then I went to stop watching TV, and the Cartoon Channel is now no longer the Cartoon Channel. So I was like, I can't even watch the Cartoon Channel, right? So I like, there you go. So now I'm down to music videos, and even those sometimes it's like, okay, that's a lot. That's way too much on the music videos. So, pick up a book, read a book, but now I'm growing fruits and vegetables and flowers in my backyard. That seems to be okay. So this was just a way to let you see again that you're not alone. You're not alone. And Jason and I are here to help give bring some humor to all of this anxiety filled time that we're in. So Jason, I turn it back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this would be a great time too, before we get into the reframing part, for Ivy, for you to launch the poll. I know we've got just two simple questions, but I think it would be really good to sort of take it to the next level. And if you all could answer the poll, there's just two simple questions here. The first one is, what has changed most in your DIEB work over the past 6 months? Is it budgeting and funding, leadership support, community expectations, policy, or staff? And then that next question around, how confident do you feel navigating today's landscape? Because I do think so many of us, we don't feel comfortable. We don't feel like we have all the answers. And while ambiguity can be an incredible leadership trait, the ability to innovate in the midst of not having all of the answers, it is perplexing, and it's reflective of the way we mentioned that we feel when we were just doing that chat exercise. So, everybody, just take a quick moment, answer the two questions. uh, what has changed most in your work over the past 6 months, and how confident do you feel navigating today's DEIB landscape?
And it looks like so far 32 out of 48 people have filled out the first question. And don't worry, guys, it's anonymous. We don't see who's answering what.
Mhm.
And 33 people have answered the second one. So we can give it a little bit longer in case anyone else wants to participate.
Sure, that's fine. Why don't we come back to the answers for that, Ivy, in just a second, if we're able? And if you could advance the slide, I'll set this one up, Darlene. It was supposed to be you, but it's really around, how do we reframe this particular moment? Like, what do we need to do? What do we need to be talking about for us to get in the mindset of really thinking about not this work as a setback, but can we see this work as a strategic pause? What I would consider to say is like, an invitation to sort of realign. I actually use the word reimagine a lot. An invitation to realign or reimagine, to refocus, right? Our impact, because ultimately that's what it's about for all of us. Our work at United Way is about the impact that we are making in the lives of individuals and families everywhere. And so we have been given these types of curveballs, I guess you can say, in the past. For many of you, you remember COVID. I'm not sure if you remember that, but so many of us had to live and walk and work through that time, and we weren't expecting to have to close our schools and run out of. Just someone today was talking about running to Costco and running to the grocery store to get toilet paper and food and all of those things, but we figured it out along the way. And when you think back to 2007 and 2008, to the financial crisis that took place, our United Ways were literally there doing our work, but having to reimagine that work. Again, somewhat unexpected, but when those realities came and we started seeing reports of our precious suburbs, homes that didn't have lights or gas, families living in these wonderful suburban homes, and at the same time needing food, and needing support, we've lived through that. So we understand as a United Way that it's in our DNA to help individuals and families through that. And I think this moment is the same opportunity as the way I think Darlene and I have been talking about it. Next slide. One of the things we just put together, two very quick things for you. One is a quote around, the future isn't something that we enter, the future is something that we create. And I think based on what Darlene was just talking about, that's the launch pad. It's all about what can we create moving forward? Where is that opportunity? And Leonard Sweet said that. And then one of the things in the conversation Darlene and I were having, I think on Sunday night, we kind of got to this whole idea around this next quote here, saying that ambiguity doesn't have to equal anxiety. And I can really just stop right there and have a healthy pause for all of us to breathe in and breathe out. It doesn't have to be anxiety. Even with unanswered questions, it can be a birthplace for strategy and innovation and inclusive leadership. And all of us are leaders on this call for sure, for sure. And so, one of the things we're going to do right now is this is our opportunity to create 9 minutes, just 9 minutes though, 9 minutes for all of you to next slide, move into what we call opportunity rooms. We're going to ask ourselves the question of what is the challenge, right? What's the challenge? And also, not only what's the challenge, but as we continue, we need to be thinking about how do we reflect, how do we listen to one another, how do we share, right? And we get to do that right now with these rooms. And so each person will take a moment to respond to these two questions. If you in your group of I think two people, if you say we just want to get right to the opportunity, that's fine too. But what is the challenge you're seeing or feeling in this moment? What's the opportunity that might be emerging because of it? This is not about solving everything. We're not creating a strategy plan or a roadmap today, right? We're really in a safe space to talk and to dialogue. But it is about naming or calling out the reality of what's real and opening the door to what's possible, getting to that opportunity. So, one of the things I would love for you to do is one person in each of your groups. If you could sort of be the scribe for your answers, because when we get back, we're going to ask you to just put in what you talked about, put that in the chat so we can all see and reflect on what you all have talked about and what you all have shared. And so at this point, I'll hand it over to Ivy and Carol. I think they're going to assign everybody into rooms. You'll have 9 minutes to be able to have this conversation. And then when we come back, that's when the dialogue happens. And I think we'll have a healthy dose of time for us to be able to have the conversation that we need to, and then really move into questions and answers that I think will be helpful to all of us on the call.
Jason. So I've assigned everybody to their rooms. A few of you may have three in a group, depending on the size. So if you, for some reason, get into a room and you're sitting alone, please don't stay there. Come back to the main room and I'll reassign you again. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and we wish you well as you move into your rooms.
Yep, perfect. And it looks like almost everyone is back in the room and a couple of people are rejoining. So we will keep an eye on that as well. I just wanted to share the results with everyone that had, oh, maybe.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Share the results with everyone. So I think you guys can all see them. Let me see if I can pull them back up on my screen because I accidentally closed them on mine.
That's okay. I can see it. So, for that first question, that was what has changed most in your DIEB work over the past 6 months? 47% of those who responded to the poll said that staff energy and morale, that got the highest number, 47%. So, kind of seems like we were right on, and some of our earlier thoughts and comments, and so many of you have been doing thumbs ups and the shaking of heads as we've been going through the slides. I think the next highest one was community expectations and budget and funding both got 16%. And then policy and legal guidance and leadership support got both 11%. So we know that this is a topic that is concerning for so many of you. In terms of the second question, how confident do you feel navigating today's landscape, DIEB landscape? The highest, let's see, 33% of you said not very confident. 28% of you said somewhat confident. And then the next number was I feel unsure or stuck. And, look, that's a high number. Typically, when you're doing surveys, once you get to 10, 15%, that's something you want to be paying attention to. And so we see that these are really high numbers, and we don't want anybody to be stuck because, as we know, being stuck and unsure, not confident, that impacts our professional work moving forward. And sometimes we don't realize that it does. 28% of you said you feel somewhat confident, and then 13% of you were in the middle or neutral. So thanks again for taking this particular poll for sure. Next slide. Darlene, can you talk about like
Yeah.
this the waterfall slide that well, basically what we're going to do now in the chat with the
Yeah.
scribes?
So for each of the rooms, you had a scribe, or you should have had a scribe. And what we wanted with you to do is just to put some of the things that you talked about in your groups where you saw there was an opportunity. So if there's an opportunity, can you just put it in the chat? We'll do the same kind of thing. Type it in the chat. We'll count to three, send it, and then we'll kind of answer and look at what those questions are. Speak to them out loud, see how many are sort of similar, because I'm sure some things are very similar. And then we'll just begin to talk about them. So I think it was what are some of the challenges and what are some of the opportunities? All right, one, two, three, go. Because some of these are longer, so
Mm-hmm.
um, might take a little bit more time. So
Mm. Bridget put in the opportunity. She was talking about reinventing. The opportunity will be to reinvent ourselves to meet the new challenges
mhm,
that the community is facing. And I would assume you mean reinventing yourselves probably as a either a united way, but also some of that reimagining is also happening as just
yeah,
individual professionals as well.
mhm,
211, utilizing demographic reports from Area 211s to help assess needs in the community.
yeah. That's great. Yes, so a product that's out there now has a different use uh,
Mm,
that can help you be strategic
mm-hmm,
in how you're making some of those decisions, right? So using that 211 report to say who is in the community for a variety of reasons. Um,
mm-hmm,
what else do we have? You know, I would tell you as people are typing in, um, I know when the changes happened here, I probably spent more time um, coaching people that were concerned about me, right? So that's where when you talk about how employees feel, employees also feel concerned about those who are actually doing this work.
mm-hmm.
Having to pivot and change and reimagining everything. And so, I walked around many offices saying, "Don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine."
Mhm,
And so it was actually nice to know that because this is the kind of work, especially in this space, this is the kind of work where you're making an impact, but it's not something that you're going to see it overnight. So it's
mhm,
a long-term impact, right? So let's say
mhm,
we started a committee and the committee's been together for 6 months, having lots of conversations, doing lots of things, but you may not see something come to life until 6 months later. And so you don't necessarily know if people appreciate what you do. And it was at this point when things started to change, and things started to be dismantled, you really did begin to see how people really care about the topic, the subject, and the activities and things that are happening around it. And lots of people who never said anything, never got engaged in any of the work, all of a sudden are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that this is not happening. I can't believe that this is happening."
mhm.
So that I think as we again, and Jason said, you don't have to be anxious in the ambiguity. There are some bright spots inside of that ambiguity and inside of that pain. There are some bright spots.
Absolutely. Thank you all for that. And I love, as a person who for many years was responsible for the financial stability area, even though I was in charge of community impact, for me, that work around Alice that you all were talking about, I think Donna Ponapinto called that out. And then several of you sort of waterfalled that as well, or piggybacked on that. I think that's so true. And when I think about the how organizations track data specifically to race, gender, and all of that, and how some organizations won't be tracking some of that over time. It'll be very interesting to see how United Ways continue to do their work and do it well in the absence of some of those. Some of that reporting, especially either federal government reporting that we're used to seeing, versus it now being more all about like everybody and removing a lot of those different, I guess you can say, categories. You know, I think it'll just be really, really interesting for sure. Ivy, you can go to the next slide. So I think now is the opportunity for you all to ask questions of us. We have a nice, healthy half hour of conversation that we can have 25 minutes before we close. And we felt it was really important, I know from Carol's perspective, to say if we have this time together, we all know we do these, and then there's 5 minutes to ask questions, and then we have to go. So hopefully we've had good dialogue, you've been engaged well, and let's now take this next half an hour to really hear from you in terms of what questions you have. Darlene and I are not necessarily the experts. Many of you all are, but we can feel the conversation. But we see that there's people who've made great comments already, so we're paying attention to that. And then there's
Mhm.
others of you who lead either United Ways or lead various departments, and maybe hearing from you would also be great. So what we'd say is go ahead and put any questions that you may have in the chat. That's one way to do it. The other thing is hit the raise your hand button that is right down at the bottom of your screen. You can raise your hand. If you hit the little heart symbol that's in Zoom, it says react. If you're not used to it, there's an area that says raise hand. And when you do that, you will go to sort of the front of the line on your computer screen. It'll let Ivy and Carol know that you have a question to ask, and we'd love to hear from you.
And just a reminder, if anyone is uncomfortable including their video or their voice asking questions, we can always go ahead and pause the recording. If you want to just ask it in the chat, you are more than welcome to. If you want to ask it anonymously, you can also send me a direct message on Zoom and I will enter it into the chat anonymously for you. So there are a couple of options, and we know that some of you might have some meetings at the top of the hour. So if any of you have to hop off ahead of time, just know that we're grateful that you're here and that you are part of this conversation. We know how important it is. And so we are glad that you had a chance to stop by. Other than that, I'll make sure that you guys have everything you need in the follow-up email and in the recording, as well as there will be, I believe, a 3-question survey that will be at the end of this once you guys hop off. But if you do stay on, we will have a great Q&A session, and then there's a couple kind of action items that Jason and Darlene included that'll pull up on the screen after the Q&A as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ivy. And I see a hand. I see a little hand in the corner. I think it's Susie Kropf. So feel free to come off mute and ask your question.
That was accidental if I hit that. Thanks for the prompt,
Oh,
though.
perfect.
This is when everybody goes quiet, right?
Yeah, well, this is the healthy pause where everybody says, I don't want to go first. I don't know who's going to go first, right? I think Bridget Rose has her hand up.
That was a mistake too. Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Boy, these hands keep popping up.
I saw Donna's
Donna
hand.
Hi
Yeah.
there. Good to
Hi.
see everyone. So my question is, and we've been talking a lot about this with other community partners, is how do we help nonprofits in the community navigate all of this? You know, our role is a convener, we're a catalyst, and so there's a lot of organizations in my community that are potentially impacted from losing funding. They may be in jeopardy of closing their doors. And some are shuttering. You know, there's a couple that I've heard that are definitely are going to be closing and winding down. So how, you know, I guess, how do we, and maybe some, let me back up. I want to do more, but funding is not the answer, right? So how do we help, you know, these organizations and communities, not just the ones that we fund, but help the nonprofit community navigate through all of this stuff? Because that's, to me, probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. I would start with saying, hi, Donna. I would start with saying, you know, a good way is to even help them have conversations, right? Help them to bring the temperature down a little bit, right? So that, so it is critical. We're losing funding. We don't know whether we can stay open. We're losing. And you actually have to sort of get them to a place where they do have to begin to breathe through it and then have very constructive conversations about
Hmm.
what can we do versus what is happening to us. I know in one of the roles that I worked in an organization, and we talked a lot about change and transition.
Hmm.
And then that change happens to you. So right now, a lot of change is happening to all of us. But the way to get through it is to figure out how do we transition through the change, right?
Hmm.
Where are people? Because you have people who are gung ho, like, I think this is great. I think this is great. We should have stopped this a long time ago, who are kind of across the river. You have people who are like, we got to do something different, but I'm paralyzed. And then you
Hmm.
have people who are like, I'm not doing anything different. I'm going to still do the same thing. And then if I get, if it takes me out, it just takes me out. And really, I think it's getting people to get quiet, to quiet the mind, to begin to have this same kind of conversation. So, what are the challenges? What are the
Hmm.
opportunities? How do we reimagine what we're doing? How do we get funding in a way that we may not have thought about before because we didn't have to? And now that we
Hmm.
have to, it will bring a whole different level of energy. And I think the United Ways while you are convening the community organizations, you also can facilitate those conversations with them, right? Because that's what people are looking for. Like, where is the level of sense in all of this, and who kind of comes with the quiet mind,
Yeah.
even though you're dealing with the same kind of stuff, but you have given yourself maybe more knowledge than they have, and right, so you begin to share information with them and insights with them, to see,
Hmm.
because again,
Hmm.
I will tell you, a lot of people have said, well, these executive orders aren't very clear and this
Right.
isn't
Right.
happening, so I'm not doing anything, and then you see something happening, but you're seeing it hot and heavy in some places, like you're seeing it hot and heavy on university campuses, but I think that also goes with other decisions that are being made. And in other places, you're not seeing it, So we have, if you just take retail, you have Target who did what it did, and you have Costco who's doing what it's doing, right? And there are consequences, there are opportunities and consequences for both. So I think we just have to come in as the level-headed, sage that we can be as community,
Yeah.
uh, in our communities.
Yeah.
Which is
I,
great because that's a lot of what we're doing. We're working
hmm.
with our community foundation. The county exec has had a really honest and open conversation with philanthropy, as well as the organizations that are going to be potentially impacted with county funding that comes through the feds. And I've just started having some conversations with our local kind of human services organization. But the talk is, we're going to have to reimagine health and
Hmm.
human
Mhm.
services. And so that to me is another opportunity, because during COVID, we had to reimagine, how we got services out to people, but we had the funding, right? Now we've got to reimagine how we do this and support the community with probably a great deal less funding. So
Hmm.
anyway, I'll be
Hmm.
quiet.
Yeah, no, I think the question was a good question, and I just want to add to what Darlene said. The one thing that I've always said this, and I think United Way as an organization is trusted, and so I think the ability to convene partners is really the secret sauce to this. There are so many communities that we have the opportunity, that I have the opportunity to work in and around, and many of them are asking this exact same question, and the question is like, who said the little red hen is going to do it? They're looking for that trusted partner who's going to create a space for the community or nonprofit community, corporations, whomever, to come together, but talk about this DEI work, but not in a non-performative way. They want to talk about it and not have a meeting where it's a session where you're griping and you're moaning about the changes. It's how do we look forward? How do we plan forward? And so to me, I feel like United Ways have the ability to be sort of that trusted translator, that bridge builder, I guess you can say, for the work. And believe it or not, I think corporations, even though you're talking to them all the time, especially from probably a fundraising or partnership perspective, some of the things that they're also looking for is like, how can we work with our corporate partners in government relations to help the nonprofit sector to translate what do these Senate bills mean? What do these executive orders really mean? I don't think we're past that. I know it's been 6 months. So I think working together to translate that beyond the policy noise to get to actionable insight. That is something that I think also can make a really, really big difference for sure moving forward. Let's see. In the chat, I saw.
I know I put an anonymous question in there as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a new ED who has only been on board for 7 months. She doesn't understand the worth of Alice data and how to use it to assist with fundraising, and it's impacting the org. How do we educate our board and new staff to understand what a great tool this can be?
Yeah. And she got it. She got a little bit of an answer. I think Chris
Mm-hmm.
answered. He said there's a simulation that they do with Alice that
Mm-hmm.
really impactful. Um,
And you can always reach out to me. I'm part of the United for Alice team, so I can put my email in the chat. Happy to give you
Yeah,
some
Carrie.
ideas and my thoughts.
Thank you, Terry, for representing Alice today. That's great.
Yeah,
My
thank you so
pleasure.
much.
yeah,
There was
I think I remember, it's been a minute since I've been at United Way Worldwide, but I remember Alice, and I remember it's a simulation where it kind of puts you in the shoes of others.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes that's what's necessary, right? People are making decisions about shoes that they're not in.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you say this is not going to be that bad or this is not going to be that impactful, but if you can put yourself in the shoes of someone who is working with limited funding, working in communities that don't have a lot of services, and any
Mm-hmm.
small thing becomes huge. It doesn't matter to you, but it matters to that community. And I think sometimes those simulated kind of activities like that just make people stop in their tracks because we
Mm-hmm.
get past that. It's not my
Mm-hmm.
lived experience. And so therefore, I don't necessarily empathize in a way that I would if I actually had to say, you've got $5 and you got to make that work, and here are all the things that you got to get done
Mm-hmm.
with that amount of money versus you have discretionary income to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. So I think that's a great tool that if Carrie can help with that, and then using yourselves, each other, to really be supportive of how that works, bringing other United Ways to the table to say, hey, we use it and this is how it works for us, right? Can be
Mm-hmm.
very impactful too.
There was another anonymous question in the chat that Ivy put in that says, what strategies have you used to humanize and reduce the politicization of the conversation?
Hmm. Well, one of the things that I can think about is the power of storytelling, right? So for all my marketing people who are on here, you're probably like, "Yay!" I think one of the things we forget are um, telling real stories, not slogans, like, but real stories of real people and how they're being impacted, those personal stories. I think that those stories help to ground the real lived experience of the people in our communities, right? And I also would say that when we tell the story, um, because I'm thinking back to about a month ago, I remember there was someone in a marketing department for another nonprofit. It was actually a foundation who was saying, yes, our stories, we typically put a face with our stories because they use real lived experience people. It was a housing authority actually. And they were saying, but like, should we even be doing that in telling the story and putting a face with a name with a real experience, lived experience? Because part of it is telling the story of who they are and who they represent, both in terms of gender or class or sexual orientation, right? And so I do think that for a lot of organizations, when you really think about how do we humanize it, I think telling those stories is also important. But remember too, I think there's also should be a focus on shared values, both from United Way's mission and the things that they want to drive and support, but also like the real life people behind those stories, like how you're working with them. So I do think that there's opportunity there. When you talk about to humanize, I think it's telling the story, finding those spaces where there's a focus on what those shared values are. And the other thing I would do is I think we need to get back to using real everyday language and not. I told you earlier about like the slogans and stuff. I really do think we need to get to moving away from like these jargon terms, right? We need to use plain language because one of the things that happens when you have a lot of noise happening in community, that
Mhm.
alone, we just talked about it. We're stressed by it. People want to know, like, tell me what are you saying in plain words? When we say even words like financial stability, like what are we really saying? And I think the simpler we get sometimes in just how we're describing a particular group of people or people that we want to help, the easier it is for people to take that in and go, okay, I get exactly what they're trying to do, right? So try to make sure that everyone gets what they need to be supported or to thrive, but make it as simple as possible. Cut through all that noise when we're talking about those stories and those shared values.
I just want to lift up one of the questions that I saw in the chat because I had answered in the chat, but in case anyone wasn't following along, what about those folks that don't want to look at how Alice works? There are too many people here who honestly don't seem to care. For my United Way that I previously worked with, our core pillars, the three groups that we supported and our community impact dollars went to, didn't follow the typical like health, education, and
Hmm.
whatever the new ones are with United Way. So we didn't utilize Alice data at all. Instead, we actually pulled the impact data straight from our community impact applications for funding. And then we organized those by zip, which was a tedious process. I'm sure there's an easier way to do it. But then we put all of those into in your town documents so that if we were speaking to maybe a CEO of an organization that's considering doing an employee campaign somewhere two towns over, we could pull the exact impact data for that town. So they could see exactly how it would impact possibly their workers or the people surrounding their business. And so we had that we covered a 5-county area for every zip within those counties. And if anyone wants the link to see what that looks like live, I did the one for last year and it's on the old website, or it's on the website of the company, the United Way that I worked for previously. So I'm happy to share that. But there are other ways to get around it if they're not interested in the Alice data.
Got it. And someone put in a chat, do you have a list of local United Ways who are, I think, leveraging Alice more likely? And so I'm sure that who asked that? I think it's Michaela Thomas.
Yeah, it was actually, hi, it was
Hi.
actually in regards to the simulations. I
Mm,
think Frank was saying that there's many local United Ways doing this, and I went to one with United Way of Maryland, I believe. It was really good because it kept the focus on the systemic issues and not like saying, oh, it's a person's fault, type of thing.
mm-hmm.
But would like to know if there's other United Ways doing this that we can try out as well.
Got it.
And this, actually this is a good time to experiment with some things, right? Where you haven't before, right? You don't have to say we're going to do something and it's got to work. Sometimes we get scared of failing, and
Mhm.
when we're afraid of failing, we don't do anything. We get paralyzed, right? And so the comment is fail fast, right? Get in there, try something, try new data, reach out to different organizations that are doing different things to kind of help propel you and to give energy to you, because it's always kind of new. It might be, you know, a little nerve-wracking, but it's always new to find something that you haven't done before and then test it out and make it work for your community, right? And if it doesn't, it doesn't, you know, so you don't hold on to that as it's a failure. It's like, oh, we tried it, it didn't work, and we're going to do something else. If you remember, post-it notes was an accident. The way post-it notes came out is they were testing glue, and the glue didn't work. And the test for glue failed and turned into post-it notes, right? So we want something that's kind of sticky, but not so sticky you can't pull it apart. And so that was one of those failures that actually was very much successful. And I think we have to get into that mindset in the space that we're in today.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say, I know Ivy's going to be pulling up sort of our last slide, and I know so many people had to jump off by 4 o'clock, and we were scheduled to go to 4:15. But I just want to reiterate that I think I used the word, and someone else used the word in the courage in the chat before. And I just want to say that even though there's a lot of things that are happening all around us, this work, I think from day one when we've started at United Way, and we are advocates. I know people don't like to use the word anymore, allies, we're allies. And so at the end of the day, that courage is still needed, whether we are convening folks or helping them to figure out what's happening in this political landscape and make it easier to digest. The reality is, I think that courage really is still necessary. And I think that for United Way specifically, I think the individuals, the organizations that United Way's fund, I think they're still looking for us to not necessarily back away. It's not a fight. It's just how do we reimagine? And I think in the reimagining, the question for all of us should really be, how do we continue to maintain that courage to show community that we're relevant, that we're here to support, and even though these changes are around, we're here to help our community partners and those that we're serving to navigate that for sure. So I just kind of wanted to say that. Um, so
And
we just had a few other things that we wanted to kind of leave you with today. So if you could pull that slide up, Ivy, that would be
yeah,
we'd appreciate that.
Jason, I've got it ready to go and I will share my screen real quick. Frank has been patiently waiting and I wanted to make sure that he had the
Okay.
opportunity to
Yeah,
speak.
absolutely. Sorry, didn't see you, Frank.
No, that's fine. No worries. I wanted to comment quickly on two things, and they both come back to the same point. Know your audience.
Hmm.
That is, at the end of the day, whether it's the simulation, and there are a number of them out there that work very well in different situations, but don't play in others. But then the second thing is with regard to Alice data, if you have a community that doesn't want to know about wage growth or they don't want to know about the total cost of living, but they're very concerned about traffic congestion on some of their roads, then you can lean into the Alice data to talk about the problem
Hmm.
to everybody when there's shared difficulty. If a family can't afford car repairs, if a family can't afford, if they have a longer commute because there's not public transportation available, then this has a spillover effect on everybody. And so there is a way to talk about Alice that
Hmm.
gets to whatever somebody's specific concern is, even if it's not individual wages or hourly, hourly earnings. There's always a way to get back to what matters to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great, Frank. Thank you for sharing that. I love Penny Clayton. She keeps giving a thumbs up. Geneva, thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Darlene, you want to start? That's the last slide.
Yeah, so as we end this call, one of the things we want to make sure that you do is prioritize your own self-care, right? You have to take care of yourself. You know, it's always you want to pour from your cup, from the overflow of your cup, not from the empty side of your cup, right? So keep putting enough to keep you going. Step back from all of the noise and you know, do things that bring energy back to you so that you then can go to work and take energy into for other people. So that's one. And again, lead with mindfulness. Be intentional about how you show up, what you do, how you show up, how you talk about it. You know, as I said before, when we dismantled all of our programs here, more people were very concerned about how I felt, but I knew it was also important for me not to be hair on fire and, oh my God, I can't believe, even though I did have the side eye with some of those trusted people I know. But for most people, I show up and say, you know, we're going to get through this. This is just a moment in time. Like
Hmm.
COVID was a moment in time and we figured it out. We got through it. This is another moment in time. And in our lives, we will continue to have moments of time. Some are much better than others, and some are really, really bad. And so we have the ability to get through this. Jason, I'll let you do 3 and 4. How about that?
Yeah. So, find your allies. We talked about that a little bit. Continue to seek out people who share your values and your vision. We all know that we're not alone. There were, 50 something people on this call who wanted to be a part of this at some point in the last hour and 15 minutes. So, that alone, especially even maybe the person that you were in your small group with when we did that, like find the people who seek them out, the people who share your values. And also from a community partner perspective, same thing. I mean, we have so many community partners at United Way in our local communities and our neighborhoods, but there are people who are there who are like, how do we continue to advance this work? They're not trying to hold on to the past, but they are saying, how do we move forward together? And then this whole idea around psychological safety at work is critical. It's so important, right? There's 5 stages to psychological safety. Can't go into them today, but the first one is inclusion safety, which is really all about respecting one another at work, making sure that we are not bullying or putting anybody down at work, both one on one or in a group setting. And when we see it happening, we need to call it out for sure. You can't create a safe environment at work if we're just allowing things to happen and saying like, "Well, I'm not the boss or I'm not their supervisor." We need to continue to stand up for one another at work so that we have a strong workplace. Darlene.
And again, and we talked about these, build your community and reframe your strategies. I was looking here, it says the old approach, the old playbook may not work, but sometimes the old playbook may work because the old playbook is we're going into a space where we're taking out some of the newer kinds of things that we have gotten used to.
Hmm.
And sometimes we might need to open up the old book to say, what did we do before all of this technology? What did we do before all of this chaos and all of this? Because I know all of y'all still have papers in your desk and in your files from way before, because I still have stuff from way before, and I don't even work there anymore. But sometimes go back and look at some of the old stuff to figure out how do you reframe it into something new, right? Like, oh wow, I didn't realize we did this before. And now we let that go because of these newer things, but now we're in an environment where it might work. And again,
Hmm.
continue, as Donna said, continue to build the community, continue to bring voices to the table, continue to seek out those that, have something to share because everyone has something to share. And a little bit from everybody makes something brand new.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's our last slide. We're just thankful and appreciative to be invited to be with you. I love the fact that we had the opportunity to dialogue, and everything from the polls to your feedback has been great. And ultimately, hopefully we're leaving today better and stronger. And hopefully the light has not dwindled, but it's actually shining brighter in terms of passion and purpose for the work. So thank you both on behalf of Darlene and myself. And I'll turn it over to now Carol and Ivy to close us out.
Well, I just want to say thanks to Jason and Darlene for being here today and supporting the session. You both are incredible advocates for United Way professionals and our alumni and retirees. And so thank you for being here and doing what both of you do. A special shout out to Ivy for her support and all the extra behind the scenes stuff to make these things go seamlessly. And then lastly, to all of you for joining us today and participating. So I'll turn it over to Ivy for any last minute comments.
Yes, so just a quick thank you to everyone that either spoke, participated, or just attended today's event. And we do have another DEIB Roundtable coming up next month on the 13th about donor diversification. And then we have a 3-question survey. It should take 30 seconds or less to answer, just to make sure that we can keep providing excellent events that you want to participate in and attend. So that is all I have on my end.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Well,
everybody.
thank you. See you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here.